Hello, all you textual deviants, and welcome to another episode of Texting. This is a special episode of Texting because it is the first episode of Season 2. And some of you may be watching the video. We have video, not only audio. By the way, I'm Mark Will in Taipei.
And I'm Tomek in St. Petersburg.
In St. Petersburg, how are things there? Very warm, right?
It's actually unseasonably mild, so some of my colleagues have been commenting on how it's bizarre because we've been getting rain like the last week rather than snow. So it's
Look at you and your wife beater there.
Yeah, while Britain freezes. Heating doesn't cost as much here as it does in the UK.
How do you like this video? Everything look okay?
Yeah, I like the AC unit in the back. It reminds me of Korea.
Mm-hmm. I've got my
you can see we've still got
bookshelves.
Like the New Year's stuff. Oh, this just fell over. Maybe I should wear this now.
You should wear that. Absolutely.
I don't know.
What are you doing? Leave it on.
I think that's going to compromise. I think being in Russia, with our LGBT stuff, that's going to be seen as propaganda.
Oh my, you might get arrested.
Yeah.
People listening don't know what we're talking about, but he just put on a blue kind of boa. Well, it was tinsel from the
Right.
New Year's celebration, but he was wearing it like a boa, and Mr. Pooty Poot might not like that.
Yeah, exactly.
He might think he's encouraging gayness
or Western
youth.
values.
Western values. All right. Well, our topic today is one that Tomek is very excited about, and we're calling it The Songs of Christine McVie of Fleetwood Mac fame. So the person we're talking about is Christine Ann Perfect McVie. She was born in 1943, and she recently passed away the end of 2022, November 30th to be precise. And when I heard the news, I was upset. I had a moment. It was sad. I had recently heard Songbird while I was drinking a tea in a Starbucks. And I had just been thinking about her, and then like 2-3 days later, I heard that she passed away, and I had a moment. I wasn't devastated, but it was, it was sad. I hadn't heard from her in a while, and I was a bit surprised. Maybe not quite as surprised as I was when I heard that Jeff Beck died a few days ago, and I might have to do an episode on Jeff Beck, which I'm sure you'll be thrilled about. But I had a moment. It was sad to think that Christine McVie was no longer in this world, although her music lives on. I'm talking too much. What do you have?
No, you're
to
not
say?
at all. And I'd like you to be the main mouthpiece for this episode. And just to clarify what you've been saying about, I don't feel in any way any kind of hostility or resistance towards her or Fleetwood Mac. I think they're both brilliant. It's more a kind of feeling a bit like an outsider, because I know how many people follow this band religiously. They're hugely acclaimed. One of the best-selling groups of all time. And so as someone who is just a very casual fan, I don't know what I can really bring that's fresh. So I kind of want to turn the spotlight on you mainly. And if anything, I can be of assistance in teasing out your history with Fleetwood Mac and, why you had that moment. Because obviously in the next 10 years and in the previous 10 years, there are going to be a lot of rock icons passing away. And so to start, I'm curious about what made you have that moment with her, and like where Fleetwood Macs stand in your musical pantheon and so on. So you can maybe just give us your Fleetwood Mac story.
Okay, well, first of all, I would say that your perspective as an outsider is valuable. You know, that's interesting. It's more interesting, in fact, that you're not a huge Fleetwood Mac fan. And I wouldn't even consider myself like a huge, I like them very much. They're a fantastic band. I've never seen them live. I wish I had, you know, seen them at some point with Christine McVie. Now that'll never happen. And, you know, I doubt I'll have the opportunity to see them at all. But I'm by no means an expert on their history. Although in preparing for this episode, I've learned a lot more about them. Some I realized I already knew, but I kind of put some pieces together just doing a bit of research for this show. So as we talk about Christine McVie as a songwriter, I want to focus on her as a songwriter and think of her songs as texts, since we're texting. It is inevitable, of course, that we talk about, you know, the history of Fleetwood Mac, because she was so important a part of that band's history, and that band wouldn't be what it was, wouldn't have been what it was without her.
Right, and so many of her major records are like coming through, right, are known via Fleetwood Mac, so her most iconic tracks.
Yes, really almost all of them. Although, since you were asking about my personal history with her, I think maybe the first Christine McVie song I heard in my life may have been that single from her solo album. It was actually her second solo album, but it's the one called Christine McVie from 1984. Mm-hmm. There was one before that called Christine Perfect, but you know that was before she married John McVie of Fleetwood Mac, the Mac of Fleetwood Mac.
And that's more like a blues record, right?
Yeah. And, you know, that is how she started. I mean, Fleetwood Mac itself began as a blues band, if you go back to Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac. And they were a great band. I mean, if you know, the Santana hit Black Magic Woman, that song was actually written by Peter Green of the original Fleetwood Mac. That is a Fleetwood Mac song, and you can hear their version, you know, on their first record, and you know that incarnation of the band did what is it called? The name escapes me. But there's a famous blues track that has like this classical interlude in the second half. I can't remember the name, but also the Green Monalishi. That's like one of the first heavy metal songs. So that's all back to the Peter Green days.
Okay.
So even, you know, from the beginning, even before Christine Perfect joined, they were a force to be reckoned with. But you know, they really exploded after she joined, and then later Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham.
Right.
But I think the first Christine McVie song I heard was the single from that 1984 solo album, and the single is Got a Hold on Me, right? And you
wait, so you heard that before you heard her songs for Fleetwood Mac?
I think so. If I think back to the first exposure I had to Fleetwood Mac, I want to say it was the Stevie Nicks song Gypsy. I remember watching the video for Gypsy, and I really liked the song. The video was mysterious. It had that, like, you know, witchy Stevie quality, you know, like there's some kind of occult or esoteric vibe, which of course I couldn't articulate at that time. I don't know how old was I then? 13, something like that. Or Gypsy may have been before that, but that is what I remember. Maybe I'd heard some of the other hits before that, but the first, you know, Fleetwood Mac song I remember hearing as Fleetwood Mac was probably Gypsy. But then around that same time, I remember hearing the Christine McVie song, and I didn't know who she was. I didn't know. Maybe I'd heard of Fleetwood Mac, but I didn't know she was a part of that. And I remember liking it, and you know, not being overwhelmed by it, but I liked it. I liked her voice. I liked the vibe of it. And then, of course, later, you know, I learned a lot more about her. But you recently listened to the solo album, right?
A little bit, yeah. I can't say like I went that deep, but I had a slow dance session yesterday with my wife to a few of the songs. So yeah, it definitely has like a. Well, I'm kind of interested in the genre descriptors for her and for Fleetwood Mac.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that kind of segues also into my dominant emotional relationship to the band until more recently. So, you know, I was watching some documentaries and like they would talk about how she's charting on the adult contemporary chart, for example. And like that as a genre would immediately kind of make me wince in general, because it would just be such kind of blasé music, right? That isn't particularly progressive, experimental. Like it's just too easy, too vanilla. And then there's also the term soft rock, which there shouldn't be anything insulting about that, but it does seem, you know, what's the term when something is like a misnomer? Is that the right word? No, I don't think that's the right word.
Oxymoron.
Kind of like an oxymoron, exactly, like an oxymoron. So it's like something that really shouldn't be. Rock shouldn't be soft, right? In some way.
Well, I don't think it ever is. I mean, when you're talking about Fleetwood Mac, you've got one of the great rhythm sections of rock. You've got the Fleetwood and the Mac. You've got Mick Fleetwood on drums, and you've got John McVie on bass. And, you know, they began as a blues outfit, blues rock. And I think they always have maintained that groove. Like that is a fantastic rhythm section. So you've got those two guys.
By the way, just to interrupt you for 2 seconds, that whole term of rhythm section was confusing for me. Like now you've clarified it, but in my research I was like, oh, that was the rhythm section. But for me, rhythm, I just thought of percussion. So I didn't realize like that could also include bass. But anyway.
I mean, it could also include keys, actually, but typically, you know, when we talk about rhythm section, we mean bass and drums.
Okay.
And so those two are like the foundation of Fleetwood Mac, and that there's always a great groove. John McVie is a very tasteful bass player. I mean, as a bassist myself, I've always enjoyed what he does, and Mick Fleetwood as a drummer is rock solid, you know. And then
you play guitar. You play guitar and bass.
Well, I compose on guitar, but you know, when I'm recording, I play bass.
I didn't realize you were primarily a bassist. I don't know why. I always assumed you were
I mean,
lead guitar kind of.
No, I'm not lead. I mean, I have played lead in other groups, but these days it's when I'm recording, it's just bass and vocals. But for me, guitar is a songwriting tool. I use it to compose.
And when you play live, you're playing bass and singing?
Well, if I do any live shows, I would just sing. I don't like to play bass and sing. It's
okay.
An unnecessary complication. So if I if I did any more live shows, I would have to hire a bassist to do whatever I've done on the records.
Okay.
So I think he's a very, I wouldn't even say he's underrated. Like, people who know that he's good, and tasteful, and he's just got a great groove, especially when he's locked in with Mick Fleetwood. They're just a very solid rhythm section. And then, you've got these three fantastic songwriters: Christine McVie, Lindsey Buckingham, Stevie Nicks. I mean, it's like, it's amazing. It's like the Beatles with Lennon, McCartney, and Harrison. You got three excellent songwriters. And, if we're going back into Fleetwood Mac history, well, you can see how Christine McVie developed, right? Like, originally they just needed someone to play keyboards, and she was John McVie's wife. She had been in a band called Chicken Shack. She was just like the blues keyboardist and then vocalist, and then she started writing some of her own stuff, and she kind of became the focal point of Chicken Shack. Apparently, I know almost nothing about them, but from what I've been able to glean, it looks like she kind of, because she was an anomaly, right? Like, here's a woman rocking out, like crashing the boys club, right? Like, who had done that before? Janis Joplin and not many others. And so here she is raising the flag for women in rock. And then she met John McVie, she married him, and then she retired to become a housewife. And Fleetwood Mac, Peter Green had a bad acid trip and flipped out and quit. And then Fleetwood Mac was like, what are we going to do? And they had another guitarist, and I don't know, they had a tour to do, and they felt like they needed another instrument. So they just asked Christine McVie, John McVie's wife, to step in, and she tours with them. And then, she becomes more and more important. They're like, they appreciate what the energy she's bringing to it. She's singing, she starts writing her own stuff, and then she becomes one of the driving forces behind the band. And an American guy named Bob Welch joins, and she and Bob Welch are like writing all the material for the new Fleetwood Mac after Peter Green. And so it's still blues based, but they're bringing this pop sensibility.
Right.
So
I don't know if it was at what stage, but I think they were describing one of the first songs that she penned for the band and how there was more space in the songs, which kind of freaked some of the male members out in some way, because it was like that indicated a kind of softness or accessibility, but that was also key to their success, is just the fact that it maybe, I don't know if that would be a characteristic of like a ballad but either way, it was maybe easier on the ears, just that kind of spaciousness. I don't know
Well,
what you think about that, but
to me, there's always a romantic quality to her songs, or at least
yeah,
the ones that I like the best. They're personal, they're emotional, there's a vulnerability there. I think that is what I always liked. Here is a strong woman. She's strong. She's like singing boldly, but she's so strong that she can express that vulnerability.
right.
Lyrically too. Not only in the way she delivers the song, but her lyrics too are so romantic. It's not like she doesn't have to assert herself. It's not like Aretha Franklin singing Respect, like, you better respect me. She takes that for granted. It's understood she's respected. She's already like someone that cannot be taken for granted. And because she's so strong in that sense, she can express that vulnerability,
I think that's very well stated. And I think that as you say that, like, you're kind of speaking for me, like in terms of in my limited experience with her, I think that that's what would appeal to me if I got deeper into her catalog,
Well, just take a song like Say You Love Me. When the lovin' starts and the lights go down, there's not another living soul around. You woo me until the sun comes up and you say that you love me. I mean, it's simple, maybe even a bit mawkish, but I always liked her use of woo. You woo me. Here is a modern woman who is not afraid to admit that she likes to be wooed. I mean, men may like to be wooed too, but I don't know what you would call that, second wave feminism or third wave, or I don't know what wave, but it's like, that she's not standoffish and saying, I don't need to be wooed, thank you very much, you just better respect me. She's able to feel that vulnerability and express this romantic quality. So and I think there's some of that in Stevie too. So it's a unique band dynamic because you've got all that masculine energy with the powerful rhythm section, and then Lindsey Buckingham is not only a great songwriter, but he's a fantastic guitarist. I remember I knew this guy that had seen Eric Clapton live, and then he went and saw Fleetwood Mac live, and he said, to me, Lindsey Buckingham as a guitarist kicks Eric Clapton's ass. Like, he thought Lindsey Buckingham was just one of the most amazing guitarists. I mean, forget about his songwriting and his singing, like, just as an instrumentalist, as a guitarist, he was one of the greats. And he is a virtuoso in his own way.
In one of the interviews with her, she says just how writing for such talented musicians was like massive incentive for her, and it really just pushed her to produce in ways that she maybe hadn't, and kind of put pressure on herself, and maybe a good pressure. Yeah, I was just on the note of lyrics. These lyrics also kind of have a potentially trite aspect to them, but I'm just thinking about the lyrics of "You Make Loving Fun," And it's like, I never did believe in miracles, but I have a feeling it's time to try. Or I never did believe in the ways of magic, but I'm beginning to wonder why. And that song, "You Make Loving Fun," was about this new relationship that she had, right, with the lighting guy.
One of the crew members, I think.
And that's interesting though. Like, so she's just gone through this traumatic breakup, right? And then she's writing this song about you make loving fun. You know, it's I don't know, just interesting to empathize with what she was going through at that time, and suddenly getting this new lease on life, right? And you feel for her, and you feel happy for her that she can taste that again, that joy after probably the heaviness that came before.
Yeah, and
but also, how is that bandmate feeling when she's saying you make loving fun? I mean, how's her ex feeling, you know?
well, I mean, that is another story altogether. I mean, Fleetwood Mac, that incarnation of the band, everyone was fucking everybody. I mean, you know, of course, Stevie and Lindsay, they were a couple when they joined. You know that, right? Like they wanted Lindsay as guitarist, and he said, "Well, if you want me, you gotta take my girlfriend too."
Right.
They had made an album, Buckingham Nicks, and they were like touring, and
they were like in the folk genre, but they call it like West Coast folk or something like that.
Yeah, I mean they were like California, Laurel Canyon singer-songwriter types. I've not listened to that album, but I can imagine.
She looks good, huh? At that time,
Stevie.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, smoking. Man. She was one of my teenage fantasies. I mean, probably Christine McVie too. Now that I think about it, like they were both. I was mesmerized by both of them, just their physical beauty, apart from their singer-songwriter, their talent.
But Stevie's more like classically beautiful, right?
Well, she's more like smoking, as you say. But I always thought Christine had like a I don't know, a girl next door kind of quality that I liked. Sure.
It's a little bit less obvious.
Yeah,
but that's the charm.
Yes, right. Both beautiful in their own ways, and even as a teenage boy, I was struck by that. Maybe especially as a teenage boy, especially with Stevie. You know, I mean, damn. But yeah. So where was I?
You were talking about. Well, you're talking about about Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks, and I assume you were going to.
Well, he joined.
Members?
Well, yeah, he joined on condition that they accept Stevie as a member too, and so they told Christine, Mick Fleetwood and John McVie told Christine, if you don't like this other girl, then we're not going to hire either one of them. And then they met, the two ladies met, and they immediately liked each other. Right. And then I was watching that documentary tonight that you sent me the link to. The first song they played was "Say You Love Me," and that was Christine's song. She just started playing it, and then when it got to the chorus, Lindsay and Stevie just joined in, and there was this amazing 3-part harmony.
It's funny because it's like the one link it's the one song that I pulled out of that documentary that I immediately had to listen to. So if you looked at my browser right now, it's like the one song I have open. Yeah. So yeah, I noted the same thing, that 3-part harmony was.
Yeah. And so, and that's when they knew, hey, we've got something special here.
Right.
But, back to the trite lyrics, like if you read them as poetry, it would be, I don't know, mawkish, overly sentimental, almost like doggerel. But
cliche.
That too is part of its charm because it's so straightforward and simple and vulnerable. It's just like this is exactly how I feel.
Honest,
and what
right?
I think it's honest. It's raw. Yeah, if we're talking about you make love and fun. You read some more of those lyrics. Let me see where we are in that.
Sure. Don't break the spell. It would be different, and you know it will. You make loving fun. And I don't have to tell you, but you're the only one.
Yeah. Not not great poetry, but when sung and put to music, it's
right. Her
very,
persona,
very
her voice,
powerful.
her charisma, all those things. The medium delivering that is everything, right?
And just that simplistic statement, you make love and fun. Again,
I think that's quite a profound sentence.
I do too. Of course, if I just saw it on paper, I would react differently,
right,
to, having heard it as a song. But just as a statement, again, there's that rawness, that vulnerability, which is a strength.
Sure,
she's not afraid to say to a man something as simple and profound as that. You make love and fun,
right.
It's like there's no, maybe it's idealized, but I feel like that's how she was. Like in her relationship, she was probably like that. She's just real and who she is. No bullshit.
Heart on her sleeve. Yeah.
Yeah. No bullshit. Not playing games. Not engaging in power struggles and one-upmanship. But when someone crosses a line, she's like, that's it. That's what she did to John McVie. Like she says he was a lovely man, but then with the drink and the drugs, he became an asshole. And one day I just said, fuck you. That's it.
Right.
And yet they still remained friends to the end, almost like brother and sister rather than husband and wife. But I think that's probably how she was in her actual life, and to me, there's great strength in that. Like she didn't even need much of a persona to perform. She's just like, she has her heart on her sleeve. I think that is what I always admired about her and always liked about her music. And the fact that it was a woman doing that was very powerful for me. And I greatly admired that. And Stevie did the same thing in a different way.
Maybe some parallels could be made with Joni Mitchell, right? What do you think about that?
Yes.
And Joni, you feel that, I don't know, you feel a kind of maybe a warmth and I would say Joni Mitchell is more poetic, but
for sure.
How do you like Joni Mitchell?
Sure. Yeah. We should do an episode on Blue at some point.
Right.
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, in terms of songwriting, Joni Mitchell's songs are certainly more complex, more nuanced, less, they're more singer-songwriter than pop rock.
Right.
And I would say that Stevie is maybe more in that singer-songwriter tradition than Christine McVie is. I mean, her stuff it's blues based, but it's poppy, and it's there's always, she in that documentary she calls herself the hook queen. She's always got a great chorus, and Stevie talks about how that was always harder for her, but Christine McVie would always have a very strong chorus, that just makes you want to sing along.
Right. And that's the quality, the sing along, the catchiness, right? Those are all things that we would associate. And I'd say that's like the strength and the weakness at the same time in terms of like my desire to engage or But I am more intrigued now than I was before, but I still can't necessarily say that it's like the music that I want to turn to immediately. But I did buy Rumors on vinyl. I think I told you when I did a couple years ago. And it's just, I mean, that record is just outstanding. It's just, it's just hard to believe how it's just hit after hit. And yeah, it's crazy.
Well, the one before that, Rumors is 1977. The one before that, 1975, that is the first album with Lindsay and Stevie. It's just called Fleetwood Mac. It's sometimes called the White Album, the Fleetwood Mac White Album, because it's white and there's a picture of it's Mick, Fleetwood, and is it Christine or Stevie? I think it's Stevie. I mean, the Rumors album is Mick and no, you know what? It's John McVie and
well, the image is like Fleetwood. This midget, right? With
that's
this super tall guy.
That's John McVie, foreshortened or something. That's some kind of trick photography. And then the tall guy, of course, is Mick Fleetwood. So there's your Fleetwood Mac right there. Of course, the Rumors album has Mick Fleetwood with those balls hanging down. I don't know what the hell that is. And then Stevie in like a ballet costume with her leg over his. That's the Rumors album. But anyway, that White album, in some ways, that is my favorite Fleetwood Mac album. I mean, that is also a great album from start to finish. And there's more Christine McVie songs on it than three, but there are three that are among my favorites. There's Say You Love Me, and then also Over My Head, which I recently learned she wrote about Lindsay, and they had a thing at one point. And then also a song
Over My Head is really good. I listened to that a couple times yesterday.
And there's a song called Warm Ways, which is also very soothing. And again, there's that strength in vulnerability. She's telling her lover she appreciates his warm ways, you know. It's just simple. It's just like sweet, direct, no bullshit. This is how I feel.
Right.
So when one is in a certain mood, it's very soothing and touching, I would say. It makes
Agreed.
me, you know, I can feel, maybe it's like a sentimental movie, you know, like you get a sort of catharsis from crying at some sappy, stupid, romantic comedy, or I don't know, it could be like a drama, a romantic drama with a sad ending, you know. You feel kind of bittersweet.
Yeah, and it could be good couple music too, right? I mean, my wife isn't into a lot of the stuff that I buy on vinyl, but when I put the Fleetwood Mac album on, she's super happy, you know?
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they brought, I'm thinking of Christine and Stevie together. They brought this feminine energy to rock music. Like who else did it in that way? You still got that powerful rock, you know, let's call it masculine element with the boys, you know. They're bringing the heavy stuff, but then you've got this beautiful feminine energy too, and it's a great mix.
Yeah.
You know, like who else does that? You've got like female background singers on Stones albums, and you know, Pink Floyd with the with the background vocalists on Dark Side, for example, but never had we seen like such a prominent place for women in rock before Fleetwood Mac. I mean, you could go back to girls groups, Motown, Diana Ross and the Supremes and so on, but they were like, they were an all-girl group. So it was a different dynamic. I don't think you had that. I don't think you had that balance before. I mean, maybe I'm forgetting someone, but
yeah, I know. I mean, you mentioned Janis Joplin, I mentioned Joni Mitchell, but those are completely, well, Joni Mitchell's, as you said, more in that singer-songwriter vein. So, not. I mean, not
Janis Joplin, she's a worthy predecessor for sure, because she's, her band was like, and she herself, she comes out of a bluesy tradition. That's a Texas girl, by the way, Janis Joplin.
Would Patti Smith go into this group? Is she in this discussion?
Well, she's she's later, and she's coming out of that New York punk scene.
Right. Okay. Linda Ronstadt.
Linda Ronstadt is.
I'm just throwing. I'm online now. Checking.
Linda Ronstadt is in that same category for sure. And you know who Linda Ronstadt's backing band was for a while, right?
No.
Who they became. Don Henley and Glenn Frey of the Eagles.
Right.
They were her backing band, and then they were touring with her, and they were writing their own stuff, and she encouraged them to like start their own thing. They sort of hinted they wanted to do that, and she's like, "Yeah, I understand. You guys go do your thing." And then the Eagles were born, So, so yeah, I mean, she could really belt it out. Linda Ronstadt, an amazing vocalist. I mean, she's not really known for her songwriting so much, but as a pure vocalist, she was fantastic. And of course, she was part of that California scene,
right?
As the Eagles were, obviously. So there's some overlap there, but I'm just thinking of like a band where you've got the masculine and the feminine, and like they're equal, like their contributions are just on the same level. Like you can't have the one without the other.
Was there like Mamas and the Papas or something?
Yeah.
I'm just throwing names out there.
That's true. That's true. And Mama Cass is a good example of another vocalist. Most of the song, I'm not an expert on the Mamas and the Papas, but most of the songwriting, I think, was done by John Phillips, and then like the others were just like performers. And I mean, they were good performers, and they all worked well together. But as a songwriting force, I think it was mostly John Phillips. It's not like Mama Cass wrote a lot of songs, or Michelle Phillips wrote a lot of songs. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think
I'm gonna throw another name out at you. Shaka Khan.
Shaka Khan. That's later. That's 80s,
70s. Well, she was the lead vocalist of the funk band Rufus.
Okay, that's true. I know her from her 80s work. That's when I first became aware of her. But yes, she was in a group called Rufus and Shaka Khan, but she went solo later. Well, I mean, if you want to talk about artists like that, you got Tina and Ike Turner, Tina Turner.
Right.
Tina Turner, who was amazing and then went out on her own, and Ike became a footnote to history, and Tina Turner went on to have her own solo career, which was quite successful. We're up on 45 minutes here. We're going to try to keep it down to 1 hour. We're going to discipline ourselves. So let's talk about, what should we talk about in the last 15 minutes? I mean, let's hit on the key points.
I can throw random stuff at you and let you speak to it maybe.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that in one interview, she was quite defensive about the idea that a lot of her songs are heartbreak related.
Mm-hmm.
She said, no, not at all. She feels like a lot of her music is uplifting. I think she was speaking speaking to the press just prior to the release of the 1984 solo album, and which I think was a more optimistic record generally. But that was just interesting that she took that to heart.
Well, all of my favorite songs of hers, as I'm looking at them, I think they're all optimistic. They're all upbeat. I can't really think of any. I'm sure she has some that I'm forgetting, but that I'm not thinking of any heartbreak songs that are like my favorites. They're all, it's don't stop thinking about tomorrow. It's all about, forget the past, move into the future. It'll be much better than before. Yesterday's gone. What could be more optimistic than that?
The song that I knew the best growing up, just because my associations with Fleetwood Mac really quickly are road trips in the Southwest with my parents playing the greatest hits, in a white Aerostar minivan,
Mm-hmm.
And that song always being the most catchy.
Well,
and then of course the associations with Bill Clinton and his campaign.
That kills it for me. The fact that became the theme song of Clinton's rise to power. That's kind of disgusting, actually. But whatever. It was the event that encouraged them to get back together. So I suppose it had.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because Obama is so heavy into music as well. So it's like, if we grant these politicians who I think that our views are pretty similar on their legacy in terms of their war crimes and so on. But if we conveniently just ignore that aspect and just see them as dudes, which they are as well. Clinton, saxophone player. Obama, clearly a massive fan of guys like Stevie Wonder. I mean, he had those guys. He had classic R&B artists nonstop at the White House, right? So,
well, yeah, that's one of the few bright spots of his presidency. They do the Kennedy Center honors, the people that Democrats choose, I usually like better than the people Republicans choose to honor,
And the Republicans always end up suing over song rights anyway. Musicians end up suing. Yeah, any Republican who uses the song, they end up getting sued.
Right.
What's the most recent case? It was.
Well, Trump played. I think he was using a Neil Young song, "Rockin' in the Free World" or something. I think there was a lawsuit over that. The most famous example, I think, is Springsteen.
Yeah, Neil Young.
Well, Springsteen suing Ronald Reagan for playing "Born in the USA," something like that. Anyway, I remember during the Obama period, Led Zeppelin was honored. And I think Stevie Wonder too in that same ceremony. Whereas if it's Bush or Trump, it's going to be some.
Who's the crazy politician
milk
now?
Toast. artist that like Pat
the far
Boone,
right.
Pat
Who's the far
Boone or
right?
something.
Marlene or something. What is her name?
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah, she's been in a Dr. Yeah, this is a funny little debate just because Dr. Dre was angry with her for using like I think the beat for Still DRE or something. And so he successfully blocked her from using it, and then she came back with something really snarky like, well, I don't want to use music that glorifies thug life and prostitutes. It was just a funny tit for tat because for Dr. Dre to be taking the moral high ground, which I'm not saying he shouldn't be, I'm just saying the whole thing is hilarious.
Yeah.
But yeah. But yeah, I mean, if we come back to one of my life mottos, which is like no better, no worse, like nobody's better or worse than anyone else. So if we do want to apply that, I know that probably makes you wince a little bit, but even though part of you probably likes that because it means that I'm not being a judgmental condescender. But if we do the whole no better, no worse, the point is that these presidents we're discussing are music fans. But yeah, maybe we should slide it.
Well, I don't know.
For this episode.
I mean, are you as implicated in war crimes as those who actually call the shots?
Well, I'm not into like the whole personal identity stuff without getting too metaphysical. I think that the whole individual idea is pretty illusory. So
maybe that's a healthy way
Eckhart
to
Tolle,
look at it.
baby. Eckhart Tolle. Every night, 5-minute meditation sessions.
Coming
Every
soon.
time there's a little squiggly line.
Coming soon to a texting episode near you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're up on 10 minutes here. Was there a question attached to that? I mean,
I'll see if I've got any other like prompts that you could run with.
Mm-hmm.
I guess just that her music is often described as deceptively simple. So do you make anything of that?
Well, again, I think that is perhaps its strength. It's direct, and I don't agree that it's.
But what if we talk about the musicality rather than the lyrics?
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. Like the look at a song. You mentioned that greatest hits album from 1988. Of course, it mostly consisted of previously released tracks because it's a greatest hits album. But they did record a new song for that album, and it's hers, and it's called "As Long as You Follow," and that is one of my favorite Christine McVie songs, and it's so different. It almost has like I don't even know how to describe it. It's like a not big band, but almost Tin Pan Alley kind of feel, like pre-rock and roll. But it's a beautiful romantic song with a nice video too.
I had this student in Morocco. His name was Mustafa, and like he was super chilled out. Really cool guy. And, but like, I think I made all the students give their life motto at one point, and his was like, it's hard to be easy. And like in his English, he basically meant, yeah, like I'm calm and I've achieved calm, but it was work, right? So I don't know. I see some kind of parallel with, it's not easy to write a simple, like a very catchy song. I mean, that's like the Beatles, right? In a sense,
Mm-hmm.
like
it's hard to be easy.
Yeah. So that's the deceptively simple thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
but
if I want to play devil's advocate,
I don't want to say like it's, it's simple if you compare it to like prog rock or something. There's not like odd time signatures and
or Radiohead, yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
because that's something I'm super familiar with.
Right, but there's great innovation in what she's doing. Like she can transition. Which song was it in that documentary? Someone was talking about how, was it "Say You Love Me"? Like, yeah, I think it is. I think it was "Say You Love Me." Like, it starts out in the verse as pretty straightforward blues-based rock and roll, but then it explodes in this pop chorus in a major key, and it's like it shows her past and her future as a songwriter in that one song.
Nice.
And so that's innovation right there.
Word. Should we wrap it up there?
Maybe so.
Can I tease up the next episode?
Please
topic?
do. Yeah. What's next?
Next is going to be we're going to be honoring another dead great musician.
Okay.
But this time from the world of hip hop, and his name is Jay Dilla, and probably one of the most famous beat producers of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And just before he died of a condition called lupus.
Right. I remember hearing that.
Yeah, maybe you've heard of Jay Dilla, but
well, I think
he had an album.
I think you made a mixtape for me or burned a CD.
Probably. Yeah.
So I've listened to it. Yeah.
Okay, nice. So yeah, it's just a collection of instrumentals. It lasts about 45 minutes. It's called Donuts. I think he made a lot of it in the hospital,
mm-hmm.
and it's incredible. Actually, in the time that I was heaviest into it was when I was in Korea. So that's there's no surprise that I did chat with you about it. But
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's a good album. I think I just bought it on vinyl, and I think it's worth bringing to the attention of our listeners who maybe haven't heard it. I think that's something that they would find valuable and amazing.
Okay, well,
yeah,
I look forward to exploring that further. I think I've heard a couple of tracks. I think you may have played them when we were in Vladivostok.
Maybe, and you may find some old samples that he uses that you recognize. So we'll see.
Maybe that should be.
We'll see what Mark Will brings.
Yeah, that should be my approach to identify the points of intertextuality there.
Right.
I like that
Turning
assignment.
me on just by talking about that.
I like that assignment. All right. Well. I like this shortened format. Like, we should discipline ourselves, keep it to an hour, so we don't get bored. And hopefully,
we can try. We'll see. Some topics, especially I think they're more literary. We might feel compelled to go longer. But
well, there's still there's a lot more we could talk about. But why say everything? It's nice if we discipline ourselves, fit everything into an hour. And leave them wanting more. All right, let's try one of these nice effects. Do you want clapping or cheering?
Let's go cheering.
Cheering. Can you hear it?
Yeah.
We have a new gimmick.
Some well-deserved applause
for the perfect Songbird. As the cheering dies out, we will wrap it up and see you next time, Season 2, Episode 2.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Bye-bye.